Ross, great to have you and have this chat. I have had the privilege of knowing you now for maybe 6 or 7 years, and one of the first people to put up his hand and say he wants to support the Shout for Masks initiative, and signed up Cars.coza as our first platinum sponsor. And at the same time also offered to give some of his insights into how this lockdown in South Africa and the coronavirus pandemic has impacted his business and the way he's led Cars.coza through this crisis time. So Ross, it's great to have you on, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the things that you've done. But first, maybe let's just start off for the people who aren't as familiar as I am to you and Cars.coza, on a little bit of background on who you guys are and what the business, or where the business was at pre-lockdown and pre the pandemic.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Jossie, man. Really good to chat to you as always. It's been a very, very interesting period. I mean, firstly, thank you for the warm introduction. A lot of the times you referred to me, it's probably closer to a we. I've got a very good team of people who I work with and who help and essentially lead the business. So, yeah, we were on a really good wicket pre-lockdown. I think we had a lot of things we were looking to roll out as a business. I mean, Cars.coza is now, I suppose unofficially, there's no actual scoreboard, but probably the largest motoring marketplace in the country. We have 75,000 vehicles for sale. We work with dealers and OEMs across the country, and private sellers as well. So, you know, on average, I think leading up to this, we'd probably get about 5 million visits thereabouts a month. And so we were servicing and really providing great value into the motor industry, and had grown, I guess, exponentially over the last 10 years. So, I mean, we still consider ourselves a small tech startup, but you know, in a lot of ways, we're one of the big players in the motoring scene. And up until, I would say, beginning of March, we were marching along pretty strongly. We had just rolled out our 5th Cars.coza Consumer Awards, powered by Westbank, which was phenomenal, and we're very grateful to have had that under the belt before kind of the lockdown and the social distancing came about. Site stats and site traffic were at all-time highs. You know, we just closed off another good financial year for ourselves, and although growth has slowed down a little bit in the latter years, I guess when you start hitting critical mass, it's quite an interesting space. So, yeah, we were looking at innovating our business already, and I don't think there's ever a good time for something like this to hit, but look, we were very fortunate in the timing of it. As I said, we'd executed our big events for the year, and we were already trying to reinvent and innovate the business. So we kind of transitioned out of that first startup phase. I suppose maybe we'd done that a few times, and we were into a new space where we were trying to empower our leadership and kind of really re-engage with our team and our customers and figure out what the next phase of our business looked like. And yeah, then suddenly this pandemic arrives on our doorstep, and we were also very fortunate that we got a little bit of a head start there. We've always looked globally for inspiration ever since. I mean, that's been something we've done before Cars.coza. I mean, and so we were keeping our eye on what was happening, and you know, kind of got wind of what was going on in Italy maybe a week prior to anything really coming to the fore here. So, you know, we started to think about it, and we started to make some pretty, I guess, bold changes in our business even before they were kind of forced upon us. And I remember, like, even when you know, the day that Cyril Ramaphosa, or President Cyril Ramaphosa, actually came and announced that, you know, we were going to look at social distancing, we already had emails going back and forth that morning, talking about moving our team completely remotely, looking at changing the way we were moving. So we were, I wouldn't say we were vastly ahead of the game, maybe a couple of hours at best, but it really did shift our business a lot. And yeah, we've been hit quite hard by it. I mean, we are a digital business. It was easy for us to, especially with the stuff we'd put in place, it was easy for us to move remotely. But our core business is actually facilitating car sales. And so we work with our dealer partners and they are not a digital business. They have, although they are digitally inclined, they have brick and mortar stores, and they have to move metal, and the lockdown hits them really hard, and therefore by association we get hit really hard. So yeah, it's been a very eye-opening and certainly in our lifetime as a business, unprecedented space, and probably the first time in our history we've ever taken a step backwards, or a significant step backwards, should we say.
So just to explain the business model, so Cars.co lists cars that are for sale at the various dealerships across the country, and dealers pay a fee for that listing. With the lockdown, obviously nobody is able to go and look at cars and buy cars and be looking at the kind of car market. So all of that inventory potentially is now sitting idle at the dealerships, and there's no point in now trying to promote them and sell them because no one can even go and buy them. So effectively, your kind of customer's business has been closed for the time being, and that has a ripple effect into your business. Is that the kind of right summary of how to think about how your business has been impacted, or is it a little bit different?
Yes, I mean, in a nutshell, that's correct. But there are, I suppose, various nuances to this. So, I'm immensely proud of the South African automotive space, and the way they've pivoted, because buying a car is not a very kind of short process, shall we say. There's a long research process, there's a long discussion, shopping around process. And what we've seen globally over the last few years is that the amount of time that the user spends researching increases, and the amount of time and the number of dealerships they walk into and actually transact with decreases. So they're getting more and more of the purchase decision and the purchase sort of lead up done online, and then just executing it, intending towards, though we're not quite there, arriving at the dealership to pick up the vehicle with everything done. So this has sped that and expedited that process a little bit. So most of our dealers are still operating. They are so when this hit, one of the first things we did was we actually reached out to our dealer base, and not to everyone, we couldn't do that, but to some of the significant players, and we said to them, what does this mean for you? And we there's various, I guess, levers that we had to pull to try and help them. But the main thing they said is we need to keep sales moving. We got metal that needs to move, and we need, from an economic point of view as well, the country needs these dealerships and the motor industry to keep turning. It's a significant player. So the message we got very loud and clear back was, you need to help us to move cars through this point. And so we kind of ensure that we kept our site moving. We helped dealers, and they did a lot of this themselves as well, to their credit. They transitioned into a digital type space. So they're still, most of our dealers are still online. They are working through digital media, email, WhatsApp, telephone, etc. And what they're doing is they're working with the consumer to get the sale into a position where it's had the legwork done, and then when the lockdown ends, they're able to facilitate the transaction. And even if that just means you still have to come in for a test drive, or you still want to come in and see the vehicle, you've potentially been pre-approved for finance, you've potentially got a whole bunch of the research done prior to this. So it's business as usual for us and business as usual for our dealers, insofar as you can still do 80% or 90% of the transaction, but we all understand that there is going to be a lag and almost like a freeze of the actual, the completion of that and the taking of the test drive and or delivery of the vehicle. So we're kind of all essentially working through a process where, conveying to our users that we are still there. They can still shop, they can still research, they can still liaise with the dealers. But yeah, the brick and mortar shops are shut down, and you can't actually take delivery of a vehicle at this point. So that's quite a nuanced space, and has a lot of complications. And obviously with the economic, climate, as well as this whole sort of COVID, ecosystem that's been created and the airtime that it takes, a lot of people are hesitant to actually pull trigger on purchasing something this big, because they want to see how this plays out. In 9 days' time, is it all over and we're all back to business as usual, or does, is there more of an effect that comes thereafter? So yeah, we're much heavier in the research and those sorts of phases right now, but there's a definite downtick in terms of people that are willing to commit to the purchase at this exact moment.
And I suppose car sales is almost always or often seen as a reflection of the growth of the economy. and they kind of follow each other. In South Africa, before this was already having some structural challenges, and now this has definitely hit another dent in those challenges. How do you think about your business, and what has been the impact in the short term, and how do you think that impact's going to be in the long term, and what are you guys doing about it?
Yeah, so I mean, we partnered with Westbank on our Consumer Awards program, and they do a fairly accurate historically a fairly accurate prediction of the marketplace, and they predicted that it would be down, I think, about 1% this year. This was before all of this, so stand under correction on the number, but it was there or thereabouts. And yeah, now it's going to be hit even harder. So we expect it to be a very, very tough market. Immediately what we did when we spoke to our dealers as well, and we certainly weren't the only ones, a lot of the marketplaces did similar things, is we gave our dealers some sort of a relief structure. So in our case, that was 50% off all of their subscriptions. So we immediately lost 50% of our revenue in April, and a commitment that we would as the lockdown went through, continue to liaise with them and to kind of engage with them to figure out how we solve this together, as well as a commitment that we were still going to keep our channels turning to ensure that the leads were coming through and guys could actually facilitate their transactions if they did move into a remote space, which they largely have done. So we're hoping to keep the wheel turning. And yeah, we expect April to be a bad month. April is notoriously a bad month for us anyway, with all holidays, Easter holidays and things which come up, school holidays. So, there are a number of different factors. And so, I mean, as far as a month goes, look, we don't normally have these sorts of revenue dips. This is, for a small business like ours, it's been significant. We still keep all of our staff on the roster. We've got everyone working remotely. We've got all our advertising still firing, although we have been we've skewed that heavily in favor of digital and been very clever about where we can get efficiencies. But no, we've taken a massive financial hit, and our business is not in a position where it can do this for months on end. So we need to look at that and kind of get those vehicles turning and people into cars. But I think as you accurately say, we're I guess inextricably intertwined with the South African economy, and so we're going to track the economy, and that's going to make for an interesting ecosystem. One thing that we do see as well, though, is that buying a car is often associated with an upgrade. Downgrades become very pertinent at this point as well. So you may have people that can't afford their repayments who wish to sell their car to downgrade into a more affordable car or buy a used car, etc. So we will, I guess, inevitably see the shift in favor of the used car market. And so there still are sales and lots of sales to be made. But I think that we would be foolish if we expected, the industry to do anything but shrink in the sort of short term.
Yeah. So you suffered at a minimum of 50% loss in revenue, but you mentioned also that you've retained all of your staff. How have you thought about your people in the company? And how have they responded to everything that's happening?
Yeah, we've got a great team, and we're very close, and our company culture is almost familial at times. And so, it was never we were, as I say, we piloted remote working with almost every individual in the team already at some point. A lot of the guys were already working a couple of days a week at home. So we had the structures and the infrastructure to roll everything out almost seamlessly. So we immediately did that when we caught wind of the situation. Long before the lockdown was in force, we were already fully remote, and everyone was social distancing. And so our team can be effective. They are used to working in these conditions, and we've given them slightly different challenges. I mean, obviously they can't go visit dealers and try and sell them packages, for example, but they can facilitate and really assist the dealers that we have. We've got to shift all our dealers at this point from a situation where they had contact details and physical presence into a digital space. We're working closely with them, and we've got more work than we care to do at this point. I mean, I'm struggling to find hours in the day. Likewise, we believe that in a recession is a great opportunity, or in a lockdown, as the case may be, to be really working at looking at things that you take for granted and assumptions you make about what works and what doesn't work. piloting and testing things within the own ecosystem. So, everyone's working from home and there are some challenges, but for the most part, we've evangelized a lot of time that people were wasting in traffic. We've tried to shorten meetings and remove meetings that were wasteful where we can. We've delegated a lot more authority into the leaders and into the team to say, guys, you need to do what you feel is right for the business at this point. We're all intertwined here. Communication's been critical. I mean, I communicate, and my partner, as well as some of the senior leadership, committed immediately to communicating every single day with the team. So we send out a post, whether it be a video or a post on the workplace, which is our internal social media network, explaining where we are, where the business is, what's happening in the country, and what we see as vital signs, and also increased our communication with our dealer base. So we are much more communicative and much more transparent as a business, both internally and externally, than we've ever been. We share, and we've given people more ownership of the problem and of their own kind of role within that. Things like KPIs, etc., are slowly being removed in favor of like, well, what do you think you should be doing, and what do you want to do in the next period, and how can we kind of effectively get ourselves to the same place that we all want to get to. So I think what's happened in our business is that we're looking past this as being a kind of, it's just a phase. We don't know how long it's going to last, and we don't know how long the effects of this are going to last. So we've taken all our big plays and we just put them on ice and said, okay, there's a new world order now. We don't know what's going to happen. What can we do today that's going to have lasting effects no matter what the future looks like? So we've invested in our team, making sure that everyone in our team feels safe and comfortable and that they're inspired. And we have regular checkups with everyone just to make sure everyone's in a good space. We're working on growing people into certain key roles that we feel are going to be there regardless of what happens in the future. Really good communication, and then sharing a lot of the things that was previously kept in sort of close circles, not intentionally, just by virtue of where it was, all the finances and all the things that are happening in the team, what our dealer, even the bad stuff. I mean, I think people can handle that stuff if it's given to them appropriately. And what we need to do as a business to come out of this successfully, and what we need to do as a country to come out of this successfully, because apart from just taking ownership of our own problem, if we do everything perfectly as a business, and we don't help our dealer partners, we're going to have no one to kind of run a business for. If we do everything internally perfectly, and we don't help our country with the crisis that it's going through, well, then what's the point? I mean, your economy is going to fail. Your people are going to fail. There's going to be trauma and all sorts of things everywhere. And then, you're inevitably in the same boat as everyone. So that's why we got involved with the Solidarity Fund, with Shout for Masks, with Food Forward SA. It's why we got involved in a number of different, ownership or country problems. And we try to figure those out as well in our time. And I won't say that we have, but we apply our minds to those as well, because I think it's a perfect example of how interconnected our society actually is. And our economy and all of these things are vital cogs within that. And so we have to do our part where we can in all of these things to enable people to do what they need to do so that we can all get out of this, because I don't see a situation where a few make it out in a positive way and everyone else doesn't. I think we all have to pull together right now. And I think South Africa generally does that really well. It's why we can defy the odds in World Cups and Olympics and we've got Nobel Prize. We've done world first. We're a good, I don't know.
Tough bunch.
It's a great place. It's a great place, this place. I love it.
Fantastic. So, I mean, some of the stuff you said is a little counterintuitive, or at least for me. You're saying what has resulted is you've actually been far more open than you have in the past, including opening up your finances, giving more exposure and transparency across the company. And while the business is going through a massive hit in terms of revenue and what you're doing, you've said, well, we need to actually support our customers and be more collaborative with them. And on top of that, we need to actually be reaching out to initiatives that are supporting the country, like the Solidarity Fund, Shout for Masks, etc., and see how we can contribute to those as well, because the whole ecosystem is interconnected. It's not just about preserving ourselves. Is that kind of where, did I get the message right?
Yeah, I think so. We don't have a very ironed out message, but it sounds about right. I think, a lot of this thing is counterintuitive. And I think that many of the things that we take for granted sometimes, and we assume to be correct, are not necessarily correct, but you don't have reason to try and change that. So, we haven't been secretive with our finances or anything before, but you have a need to know basis, and you don't share information because you're kind of working through things in a different way. And, things just happen in a business. Everyone's busy and everyone's doing things. And now when, the one thing I did when this happened is I cleared my schedule of everything that was not critical. And that actually turned out to be a lot of stuff that was on my plate that was not critical, exploring new things. And I was like, let's just clear it up. So I cleared my plate, and suddenly I was like, I need to take care of my team so that my team can take care of our partners. And then we need to start looking at the world. When that became clear, I realized that we need to be communicating a lot more with our team, because it kind of felt like it was really, really important. It felt like it was the most critical thing. And I remember thinking about it from the flip side as well, which you don't often get. Sometimes you get lost in your own ecosystem. But when we were waiting for the government to tell us and the president to come and speak, like, a day was too long. 2 days was too long. We didn't know what was happening. Like, when you're looking for the stats and you're waiting for them to update in the early days, and you're trying to figure out where you are, you forget, you feel what it's like to not have the information and to not know. And even though you trust that the people are going to make the correct decisions, you still want to know, and you get this anxiety that builds. And as a business kind of leader, sometimes you forget that, like, I do this all the time. I'm like, guys, don't worry. I've got your best interests at heart. We're not going to do anything that's untoward, or whatever the decision is. When I'm interviewing someone new and people might think that they're coming to take their job, silly as some of these things are, they are real, and we all feel them. And when you're on the flip side of that, sometimes it's a great place to reflect on how you impact on other people. So my team is sitting there. They may trust that I'm going to make the best decision for them, but they don't know what that decision is. And the longer that is delayed, we don't realize we're delaying it or we're taking a few days to give it to them, but to them, those are anxious hours that they're waiting to get the information. So I told them, we will commit to giving you communication every single day. Once I committed to doing that, I need to find stuff to tell them. I mean, I didn't want to waste anybody's time. And those communications filled up really quickly with actual information that is happening. And as soon as you commit to being, communicative and honest and transparent, then, well, why am I not giving you the financial information? This is what happened. We just took a massive bath in this particular scenario, and the business is in a tricky situation. But don't worry about that. We have run a tight ship, and we do have, a few things in the oven. Your job's not going to be, I spell those things out as well. Your job is not going to be lost in the next sort of 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months because of this. But I also need something from you, because we are, fighting uphill now. And if we all just sit and rest on our laurels, if we bunker down and don't do anything, A, I believe the country loses, but B, our business may not survive 6 months of this. And so we need to be moving very, very quickly, and we need to be aggressive, and we need to be honest and have candid, brutal conversations with each other. And it's amazing how people respond to that, because I think underlying that is a complete trust of, I trust you to do what you need to do, and hopefully you trust me. And if we're being honest and we're talking about the problems, we can solve them. If we aren't, well, we're not. And I, as much as I hate to admit it, I think that exists in a number of businesses, and probably existed in our business for a long time as well, where it's just not the right time, or you just don't feel up to having a difficult discussion. So it kind of gets pushed a little bit. This thing and any crisis, I think, just brings a certain impetus to every decision. You don't know what's happening tomorrow. Things are moving so quickly now in this organization that, yeah, you're forced to trust each other. You're forced to have hard discussions. You're forced to, there's nowhere to hide. We're all just running it, and you can see when people aren't. So it's an interesting space. And if I could somehow make all the potential anxiety and trauma and hurt disappear, I would say that in many ways it's a breath of fresh air into our business. People are operating very much, it feels like the early days. It feels like a startup again now. And in a lot of ways, it felt like it was almost tending towards a corporate as we grew. And that's very interesting. But unfortunately, there are those other elements, and we are sensitive to the fact that the world is not in a particularly good place at the moment. And so, yeah, you do have to caveat and overlay those things, because there is anxiety even in our own business. I mean, everyone is worried about what the future holds, and concerned for the people that are going through a lot at this point. So, yeah, it's kind of bittersweet.
I think if I take what you say and I use an analogy that came to my mind, I recently moved to New York, and I've been living there for quite some time, and one of the world leaders who's gotten a lot of praise for his response is Cuomo, in how he's kind of come with the brutal truth and honesty, and just laying out the facts as he knows them, telling people when he doesn't know the answer, and just saying, this is the situation, this is what we need from the public, this is what we need from people, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, and this is the kind of brutal, honest truth. And it sounds very similar to your approach with your company. And what I've seen for the people of New York is they've responded very positively to that, even though the situation in New York City particularly is dire. And I think that's what you're saying is often lacking in terms of how we communicate as leaders in the good times, because we forget that there's this process that we're going through, but the people that you're leading want that information. And like you said, every day is critical in this situation, but in a kind of more relaxed situation, we forget that those days become weeks, they maybe become months, or even a quarter, where we're not necessarily giving that frequency of updates to our team. And this is reminding us of the importance of doing that as leaders within our companies.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've been researching prior to this, because we were going through a cultural revolution within our own business to try and figure out where we wanted to go. I keep reminding myself that everyone in my team is an adult. They deal with everything on a daily basis. They are in lockdown. They're taking care of themselves. They're taking care of their families. They don't need me to take care of them in many ways. What we need to do, I believe, as a country, and I think we're doing it well right now, as a community, as a business, is we need to have a common goal, and we need to be working towards it. We need to know what our role in this, structure is, so that we can help to enable the right people to make the right decisions at the right time. Which is why, as I say, when we were looking at doing all these new imports and stuff, I thought we might be pulling at loggerheads. We might be pulling in a different direction to where the president or to where other companies, where the health department wants to go. Why don't we enable them to do their jobs? We can't go and become doctors overnight. But what we can do is do our jobs well. We can stay at home. We can do entertainment. We can help people to find cars. We can help the economy to move. We can help our families. We can help our dealers. We can take a lot of pressure off the economy in this particular segment. And then let's enable other people to do that. But I don't think very many people in the country and in the world right now need somebody to tell them what they need to do. I think what they need is people to show them what their part to play is, and that's the communication coming through. And then realize that, yeah, we are all capable of doing what we need to do. And sometimes, as I say, what we didn't do very well was communicate maybe the vision, or and I say that with respect. I think we've been through, we've had times where we were incredibly effective as a young startup, and we've always, we compare ourselves at different points. So we've had our ups and our downs, but at times we've been to a position where I don't think we've conveyed the direction we're going in. And that's what I think, the country as a whole is doing well. This is the direction we're all going in. This is what we need of everybody in order to do that. How you go and do that is up to you. So, sorry, it says the internet's a bit lost. Did you get me there?
Yeah, I got all of that.
Yeah. So we're trying to do that within our team. Like, guys, you know what your customers need right now. You know what we need as a business. And I'm going to just try and make sure that you understand what direction we're going in, so that you can all play your part. And I have a part to play as well as everyone else. So I think that's the big communication lesson that we've had, the brutal truth, and communicated, I guess, effectively in terms of a goal, a mission, a vision, call it what you will, is very effective. I don't think people need to be micromanaged, and I think sometimes we lose that. So yeah, there's so many lessons in this.
So you mentioned that your role is to help people see what the overall direction is, and what I've gotten from a lot of the companies and founders that I've spoken to is, with so much uncertainty, it's hard to know what direction to steer towards. how have you managed to make that decision and kind of figure out that this is the direction we should be going in?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing from our side is we didn't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to this in terms of where our business is going. I mean, we know what our goals are. We need to service the South African public in their ability to buy vehicles. We need to assist them with advice. We need to make sure we're a great source of information and empowerment for them. We need to help our dealer partners to kind of, move the stock that they have and to kind of, I suppose, run their businesses as effectively as they can and to connect those two segments. So we've already got things that we've got in place to help our dealers transition into digital, etc. And now we're just rolling those out. We've already got a number of different plays in terms of creating new products and adding value. So we were mindful not to try and take our long-term goals and reduce them down to a 3-week period and try and change everything in this space. I mean, that's not effective. But what we tried to do was reshift some of the short-term things that we could do, which will still impact those long-term goals. So we want to make sure that, where we are innovating products and stuff, we're still going about doing that. But maybe in our marketing, we need to change our marketing tack in the short term because more people are in different ecosystems at this point. So we're reacting to those sorts of things. We've also got a number of projects that we wanted to test. We've got a number of things that, departments that can't effectively work the way that they were working previously. And so we've realigned them to say, you had these other goals that you wanted to test down the line. Let's see if we can make those things come to the fore now. And I think we're going to launch probably 2 or 3 new offerings to the public in the next sort of week or 2 weeks. Most of those are in our content realm, whereby we're able to, people are still consuming a lot of content. We still think entertainment is a critical component of what's missing in the industry and maybe in the world at the moment. It feels like, our artistic representations and our joy and our sport and all the things that we kind of use to just switch off have been removed. And we've got this always on bombardment of negativity around this thing that's happening that we can't control. And so I think that we do need to sort of try and get people to move a little bit more into normalcy again, whereby they can, shut down and get content. And you're seeing things like, obviously, there's Box Series and Netflix and all these guys which are pushing stuff out. So those things definitely do exist. But we're pushing out new things, but what we're trying to do is say, okay, what is the core principle here? Innovation, the ability to move quickly, the ability to change. Those are skills that we want to keep and we want to harness and we want to nurture through this. They will be valuable to our business, whether we are in lockdown or not, whether we're working remotely or not, or whether things go back to normal tomorrow. We need to be listening and engaging with our customers, communication. So we've tried to isolate it down to skills that are not valuable for the 3-week lockdown, but that are going to be valuable through the entire process, that sometimes we don't have time to nurture and maybe we've been too constricting because we have day-to-day work that needs to be done ahead of these things. So innovation's been prioritized, risk-taking in terms of certainly we're launching products, try to remove red tape, try to shorten, as I said, make the meetings smaller, but give people the autonomy to try things and maybe encouraging a fail-fast mentality at this point, because I almost believe that provided you're playing in an entertainment space, there's a lot of scope to create stuff as well as to test stuff, because I think people's focus is largely elsewhere now. So, we're very critical of ourselves sometimes when we think our world's going to end if we make a video that doesn't resonate with people. And now, the perspective is there. So the fail fast mentality is being pushed a lot more aggressively, and the take ownership and autonomy of the decisions that you make and play with it, have a bit of fun, but let's try and make quick iterations and quick changes and launch things. So as I said, we've put 4 or 5 things down, 3 of which we'll try and launch in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And, we haven't launched some of these things in, 3 months. Now we want to get these all over the line from different departments. So we've tried to remove all that tape and say, okay, let's see if we can execute. Let's innovate and let's execute, because these are skills that are going to continue to kind of move, but they're all done within that same lens of what our structural goals were in the long term, because I don't believe this is going to, it's not going to change our market and our business so radically in terms of what we do for a living that's going to be significant, but how we do it could be significantly impacted by that.
Remarkable. So I want to take a slight shift away from the company into yourself. I think just before we got on this call, we spoke about kind of your sleep habits and how they changed over time. Maybe you can just tell us how you're keeping yourself calm, available, and sane, so that you can lead the company the way you've described.
Yeah. Okay. Look, sleep is one of my skills. No. So I'm very performance orientated. That I always try to be a high performing individual, and this is not something new in this space. So I train a lot. I'm mindful of all the different things that I do. Sleep I never compromise on, because I believe if you have a healthy mind and a healthy body, then you can be more effective in the work that you do. And when we started this business, I mean, I was working such long hours, and I needed to somehow, I don't know, keep my mind clear, and I wanted effective hours. I just didn't want, a sum of very unproductive hours. So, myself and my partner and a number of the senior guys who've been with us for a long time, we inevitably started, we took up training and gymming and whatnot. And I got into a space where I was starting to train twice a day. So I would do morning work, train at lunchtime, afternoon work, train in the evening, and then do an evening session. So I almost felt that with each training session, I sort of cleansed my mind, and I was able to come back with new perspective and renewed vigor and mental capacity to actually do effective work. So I've been doing that for many years. So I've maintained that schedule through here. On the sleep side, I still believe sleep is the single most important thing that we can do for productivity, for creativity, for innovation. I think, we take for granted. There's a number of studies on this, and I got a little sleep app which I use and tracks it. And, I generally sit in the 98 to 100% in terms of what the sleep app scores my sleep. I average sort of 8 to 9 hours every single night. And, I want quality sleep at that point. So I do all the standard things that you've been told to do, switch off your phone before bed, try and like relax, go through all of those type of things, hot bath, all that stuff. Although not all of them every night, but when this thing hit, it really did weigh on me heavily. Part of the reason why we got involved with the Solidarity Fund, Shout for Masks, and, Food Forward was that, as a business, we really felt it. I mean, we wanted to make help, and we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to help, and my sleep on that score went down to like sort of 60, 70%. I was not sleeping well. I was not effective. I was anxious as well. I would still train, and the training gave me some respite, but I could feel this overbearing, just a weight that was on me. And I'm sure most South Africans can relate to that. So, over the past week or so, a few things changed for me. One, we made the donations, and we decided that these were the best use of our time, our effort, our kind of resources to empower other people and to enable other people to do the most effective thing. That check mark was very liberating insofar as we now no longer as a business sitting and doing nothing. We don't feel powerless because we have put those resources and enabled people. And that's why we did that, even though we were in a financial I suppose, crisis, if you will, at this point, was we believed that if we could get that, I mean, we canceled team events. We had our birthday party and everything that we were going to, we canceled that. We pulled all the budgets in, and we found ways to, cut things that were potentially frivolous, although, frivolous in this time, normal in other spaces. So, and we evangelized it, but getting those check marks, doing things and not feeling powerless. I got back into my training, I never stopped, but I was training. I shifted it up a little bit, and then I stopped. I took a complete social detox in terms of what I was listening to and what I was consuming. I'll listen to, the president speak once a week when he does it, but following the stats ticking up globally and what everyone's doing and the infections. Firstly, I don't believe that those could possibly be accurate. Secondly, I know they're going up every single day. There's no day in the last 3 weeks where I've ticked it open and it's gone down. It's not the way these things work. It's going to consistently go up. It's going to go up according to a sort of a path that is almost predefined statistically. And so where it's going to be. We sit there checking it every few hours, and it consumes our brain. And so I stopped doing all of that stuff. I started focusing on spending time on my team, being effective here. If we can run our business effectively, we can get more resources to help our partners. We can get more resources to help our country. So I started to try and focus on the things that I could do that actually had an impact and take away all the things that were noise and distracting to me. And unfortunately, a lot of that is the news. You've got the fake news, all the stuff that's going around. I don't experience almost any of that. I also don't experience the repeat of the news of what's happening and the slight uptick in kind of cases as it happens, because quite simply, I'm in lockdown and I'm doing what I was told to do, and what I believe that we should all be doing. And that's all I can do right now. And then obviously trying to kind of work with great causes where I can. That's effective use, in my opinion, of course, effective use of one's time to help in this situation, as opposed to just one-way traffic of news coming in. And I knew this because I've boycotted news for years and years and years, and I'm generally a happy person as a result. So when I stopped doing this, the last 3-4 nights, I've gone back up to 100% on my sleep. I don't have the weight of it because I know there's a problem. The problem is not changing. We need to solve the problem, and I believe we are putting in resources to effectively move towards solving that problem. I believe that I think what I've accomplished in my own personal life in the last few days is I found purpose in what I do to try and help, and I feel like I'm helping the world and South Africa move towards, I guess, the light and move towards healing by doing the things that I can do. And that, for me, gives me a sense of accomplishment every day, which enables me to go to bed and to sleep fairly relaxed. I do still worry about the space. I don't think anybody can get away from that. But there's an amount of worry which I think is acceptable. And I read a really interesting study a while back that the human, I can't cite where it was from, but that humanity and the human brain can take an enormous amount of anxiety and an enormous amount of hardship, provided it is juxtaposed by and kind of, I guess, almost overlaid with an enormous amount of happiness and the reality of it. So it is the state. You can understand death if you understand life. The circle of life makes sense to us. We can live in that ecosystem. When you're only being bombarded by sad stories, hospitals are not releasing the birth stats. There's not a little column there going like, look at all the new babies that have been born, or look at the amazing stuff that's going on. So what you do is you get an overwhelming sense of negativity, which creates anxiety. If you distance yourself a little bit from that, you still get the negativity that comes in, but you're able at this point to also get the positivity, which I think the human brain can sort of piece together and make sense of the world again. It's a beautiful day outside, and there is also hardships of the world. I understand that. And I don't mean to make light of the situation, but in terms of a coping mechanism, I think, like the brutal truth that we are able to give to our team, if there is an accurate portrayal of what the world looks like, it's easier to understand, as opposed to the media frenzy, which often takes a very negative slant because that's sensational and throw that over you. So for me personally, my sleep has gone back to normal by taking some of those elements into I guess, to my lifestyle. And yeah, I feel like I'm in a good, productive place as a result of this, and that our business is growing, and we're going to launch some really cool, exciting new products. And we're also trying to help the people to get over this. And I think our country is going to be very successful in its approach towards us, and the world, and that we will get through this. And so there is positivity and there is beauty. And yeah, we've got a few hard yards to walk through before we get there.
So that's a very inspirational message, and I think it reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but what's come to my mind is he has a diagram which he calls the circle of influence and the circle of concern, and they overlap each other. And you can think of it, what's inside the circle of influence is the things that you can influence yourself, and the circle of concern is everything outside of that. And what you're describing is when you're plugged into social, the news, etc., that circle of concern just grows and grows and grows and occupies more and more of your mind space, head space, ability, etc. And what you've done is said, well, I'm going to actually reduce that circle, and I'm going to focus on my circle of influence and what I can do, what I can contribute, how I can help, how I can be effective, how I can manage myself, etc. And you've expanded that circle, which makes you a more effective individual. So it's great to see how that's actually played out in that framework, and how you can use that to think about, where am I applying my attention Is it in that influence, or is it in that concern? And I, as an individual, a family member, leader, father, mother, sister, etc., how much time am I spending in those two circles?
No, that's beautifully put. I haven't read that book. No, as much as my headmaster at school tried to drum it into us, and maybe I have, I guess, somewhat anecdotally read it by virtue of the talks he
By
used to give to us.
practice,
But
yes.
yes, I haven't read it, but I'm very familiar with the title of the book due to that. But yeah, it does make sense, and I think that's why Stephen Covey writes books and I don't, because I think that's a much more succinct way of putting it.
So Ross, thank you.
Even though I am,
yeah, even though you're living it.
no, I was going to say, even though I am in the process of writing a book.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, we'll have to interview you next when that comes up. I just want to say thank you for the inspirational message, the support, and the approach that you and Cos.coza have taken. I really do think there's a lot of lessons here for other business leaders and individuals to learn from. So before I end off, is there anything else you want to mention or say? Otherwise, I'll give you back your time.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's my absolute pleasure. And as I said, I take a lot of inspiration from what it is that you guys are doing. I listened to your talk with Howler, and obviously Shout for Mars is a phenomenal charity, and we're really, really in awe of what you guys have done and what you're doing to enable South Africa to get through this. From my perspective, this is a learning curve for all of us, and I'm just trying to learn through it as well. So I listen to these sorts of podcasts and talks, and I'm trying to learn from my team, my family, and anyone that I can. So thank you. No, always great to chat to you, Jos, and thank you for all the inspiration as well. Thanks for having me, and it's rad to catch up.
Yeah, man, all the best. Thank you.